Namaste, yogis. How are you? I'm just getting my screen share set up. It's nice to see you here. I'm Suzanne Dulin. I'm the founder of Sadhana, and we have a Facebook group, which I invite you to join, the Sadhana community for yoga teachers and enthusiasts. My mission at Sadhana is to raise the level of teaching in yoga. And part of what I'm doing is helping to educate people about educational theory and how we can bring that into the yoga world. So today, I want to take you through some of the ideas that I have about how we can improve teacher training and actually training from end to end. The Yoga Alliance program is, according to educational theory, poorly designed. And also, according to the research that I've done on marketing, it is poor marketing programs that create a very bad relationship between yoga teachers and their students because they create an environment of distrust. So I'll be talking about that in this presentation. My goal here is not to give a cookie cutter solution that we're all going to adopt, but to start a conversation about other ways that we can look at training in the yoga world besides just teacher training, as well as besides just whether we have enforced standards or not. And for some reason, my slides got just a little disordered, my slide notes. I printed them out, so now I have them in the right order. So I'm going to be talking about a solution that's based on martial arts belt system, and that is to use bracelets instead of the belts. And I'll talk a little more at the end of this presentation about the specifics of that. Yoga teachers could use the bracelets in the same way that martial arts studios, which is to show the students a clear path of learning prior to teacher training. And it also creates a better sales structure for yoga studios, and leaders of teacher training programs can develop programs that fit their students. So to sum up, I think that instead of trying to create cookie cutter programs, we should teach teachers how to teach so that they can design good learning and create programs that are appropriate for the students before them. So the big thing that I want you to take away from this training is what good learning is. And I have a download that you can get for free with this, which is a toolbox with the skills that instructional designers use to design training. Before I get into this too far, I want to tell you a bit about how I put this all together. I've been a yoga teacher since 1997, and I've studied several different styles of yoga. I trained as a teacher before the Alliance was a big part of teacher training. I also moderated the largest and longest discussion board related to yoga, which is the Moving into Stillness discussion board, still out there. And the current software, it's gotten over 2 million hits, and that is only the current software that we've used. There's a ton of great information there. So I read lots and lots of comments by yoga teachers about their own training programs and their problems creating viable businesses, which I think are really interwoven, and which is one of the things that I'm going to talk about, how these things are interrelated. I work professionally for a major engineering company. I have my master's in engineering management, which gives me a background in entrepreneurship because my program was really, really focused on helping people start up businesses. I also happen to be married to a martial artist. My husband is a 6th-degree black belt in modern Arnis. He's previously held high-ranking black belts in several other systems. He is amazing. And so, like me, he's had experience in being a part of training in many different systems in his world, which is martial arts world. Going to advance the slide now. Feel free to put something in the chat if you have questions. Don't you love this article from The Onion? 1 in 5 women training to be yoga teachers. It's almost reads like it could be the real headline. So today, I'll show you why the Yoga Alliance system is bad education. I'll be talking about why studios selling teacher training is bad marketing and sales, how we can borrow a page from the martial arts world to make something that will make us better teachers. Let us design appropriate training for our own students instead of to some generic standard, and how it helps us show our students a clear path of real learning. How we use the new bracelet system to make money for yoga studios without selling out, giving teacher training to anyone who has a functioning credit card. So let's start by talking about teaching, what teaching and learning are, because I think that before we start talking about designing teaching and learning, we should talk about what exactly is the goal of what we're designing. Deborah said, I don't love that headline, 1 in 5 teachers, yikes. Yes, Deborah is from The Onion, but it seems pretty true, actually. I meet people all the time who are like, oh yeah, I'm a yoga teacher, and I'm so glad you could join us. Thank you. I have everybody on mute, and the chat is how we're talking until I finish the recording, which I know I messaged you. Okay, so let's talk about what teaching and learning are. The goal of learning is to get to that moment where whatever they are studying clicks, the aha moment, the place where the light bulb goes on. So teaching, to me, is using all of your skills as a teacher to get your students to that indescribable magic moment of knowing. The measure of learning is not how many hours one spends in the classroom, but it is the result of learning. And having that knowing completely integrated into one's mind, one's heart, and one's body. So for example, if you have ever been around a child who is learning to read, oh, thank you for telling me how to pronounce your name, Deborah. Thank you, like in the Bible. Anyway, so I'm going to give you an example of learning. If you've ever been around a child who's learning to read, you see them go through this period where they struggle to sound out the words, and then you see them like memorizing books, and they sort of pretend that they're like, they're flipping the pages, they haven't memorized, it looks like they're reading, but they can't really read. And then you see that moment one day where they get it, and they start to read, just like the Bible. And that is the moment of knowing, that moment. And from that moment on, they can start to read small chapter books. They just tear it up. And the measure of this is not how long you sit in the classroom. Like my daughter, it took her a long time to learn to read. She was one of the later readers in her class. But then the next year, like in 3rd grade, she was reading Sherlock Holmes, So she got reading really well. It just took her longer to get there. We don't say if somebody's been sitting in 1st grade for the whole year and they can't read yet, and they've been trying really hard, that they can read. So the result of learning is knowing, and that's what we're trying to get people to. So when we have these conversations about, is 200 hours enough? Well, it just depends. Some people could learn in 200 hours and get to that place, sort of depending on where they come into the program with, partly. Or maybe they're just a fast learner. But the measure of learning shouldn't really be how many hours they're in the classroom in the first place. This is a very simplified version of what we call learning taxonomy and the instructional design field. And I just invented this. You can't go in any book and see it. But it's just to give the idea that there's steps to learning, and your journey is to take people from where they are now to the next stage of learning, all the way up to that point of knowing it. So you can Google up Bloom's taxonomy of learning if you want to see these out. And I have a handout that sort of simplifies these concepts specifically for yoga teachers. I'll put that in at the end of this because I just have so many things to juggle I can't type too. Okay, so these theories about learning are well researched and studied. They come out of universities and they are tested and papers are written about them. In terms of learning, there are stages of rejection of what has been learned also. Mimicry is the first stage. Right, so I don't get into this here, but there's different taxonomies of learning. It's in the handout, and it sort of depends on what you're learning. So if you're learning knowledge, then like the first step is to learn the definitions of the terms. But then if you're learning a physical skill, it's like mimicry. Well, paying attention, actually, it's the first skill. And then mimicry. And then with emotional behaviors, I think it's fairly similar. I have to double check on it, but it sort of depends on what you're learning, what those stages are. But however, whatever the subject is that you're learning, there are steps to learning that have been measured. And actually, I didn't know this about that there are stages of rejection of what is learned as well, and I'd be really interested in knowing about that. Okay, so this is a stage of learning from the psychomotor domain, which is how you learn physical skills. And you can see it starts with paying attention and then mimicry, copying others, and then trying it out on your own. And you're gaining in fluidity as you study. So I believe that somebody else has joined us, so thank you. If you have any questions, just put it in the chat window. I cannot see how many participants there are right now without covering up the window, but the chat window is here to talk to. And then the next thing is a sense of structure, and also starting sort of roughly fluid, and then to more and more fluidity, and then finally to that light coming on, know it in your bones, becoming creative. And so it's not really about, we're not trying to get people to the point where they can sort of recite rotely things. We're trying to get people to a point where they can understand it and become, it's sort of integrated in with them, and they can become very fluid. Learning, like many, I'm not familiar with this term, M-A-N-Y-O-M-A-Y, Mani Omaya, learn by rote, ideas, thoughts, yes. Vijnana Maya, direct lived first-hand knowledge, the aha and the bones, yes. Manamaya Kosha, the koshas, yes, I do recognize this, Manamaya Kosha, Vinaya Maya Kosha. So if you're not familiar, we now have 14 people, and thank you so much. Please make sure that you're muted because I am recording this and I have the chat window open. So yeah, this is related to the koshas, which are, so this person on the chat is talking about how there are different koshas and different bodies in the yogic language, and that it also relates to language. Thank you so much for coming on. Please make sure that you're muted. You can talk to me in the chat window. Okay, so this is showing a ladder of learning all the way up. Now, one of the things too I want to point out that's on this page is that you can't know if somebody knows something. But what you can observe are actions that indicate that somebody probably has learned. So we all know people who have, like, we've all done it, like studied right before the test and then passed the test. We don't really know it, but we hope. Everybody seems to be muted. I'm not hearing anybody. So, we all know that you can pass a test without really knowing something. That's all related to how good of a test you write. But there is a sort of conversation going on in yoga, like, well, you can't know if someone's enlightened. No, you can't know if somebody's enlightened, but you can know if they're learning the subject that you're teaching them. And I'll talk about this a little bit more later. But just as far as how we evaluate learning, we're looking for skills that indicate that somebody probably learned what they know. And you never finish the ladder. And once you get to a ladder, like, for example, once you learn how to read, you don't stop learning how to read. You just start up another ladder to learn another further skill of reading. So with yoga, we get to a point where we know it in our bones and we're more fluid. And then we start a new path of learning in yoga from this place. There's not just like one ladder of learning, you climb and you're done, which is part of the problem with a lot of our teacher training programs, is they're sort of structured like you become a teacher and you're done. There isn't just one learning ladder and one light bulb. Every person has their own unique light, and every student needs the steps that will get them to the point where the light turns on. A teacher is a ladder builder. It's not a teacher's job to pull out that same old ladder time and time again. It's not your job to pull out the one that the Yoga Alliance built and hand it to people. Yep. Whoever said that. Exactly. It's your job is to look at the student in front of you, build the learning ladder that they need to get them to the point where their light goes on. And someone is saying there are many different learning styles. The Yoga Alliance is not about learning. They are about making money. They are not educators. I'll talk a little bit about this issue. I do think that the people in the Yoga Alliance mean well. To me, I think that this idea that we can, from this top-down approach, regiment what good learning is, regulate it, is very much like people who want to add more testing into schools and say that that is how we're going to improve education. That is not how you design good education. And I'll talk a little bit about this more later, but good education is designed for the learners in front of you, and it's not designed from the top down and handed down on high to say everybody should climb this ladder. Yeah, teaching to the desk does not provide good education. Amen. Oh, my whole family is teachers, so this is another element that I bring to my training. So let's talk about, speaking of the Yoga Alliance, essentially I want to bash on the Yoga Alliance a little bit. Why the Yoga Alliance standards are bad learning. Good education pushes the students well beyond their comfort zone. That is true. Good education is hard. And this person is saying, I was a special ed advocate at our school board. Oh, yes. And so special ed is just, first of all, you are a saint, because that's very, to me, I just think it's really a special path. If you're on, I'm seeing now almost 30 people on. Thank you so much for being here. Please make sure that you're muted and the conversations are happening in the chat, because if I unmute the mics, then it all goes on the recording. But we will have a chance to talk at the end of this, so stay on. I will turn off the recording and I will open up all the mics. By the way, when I'm seeing the chat, I have the chat up in my phone. I cannot see who is giving me the messages. I only just see that there are messages in the phone chat. Okay, so let's talk about why the Yoga Alliance standards are bad. And this is what I was just talking about. The thinking that we can fix learning in yogas by having the Yoga Alliance be better is a lot like people who think we need more standardized testing in schools to fix our education system. Any teacher knows that this one-size-fits-all approach is poor learning design. So my sister, everybody in my family is a teacher. My sister is a board-certified teacher of elementary education. She mainly taught first and second grades in rural classrooms in the South. One year when she was in Texas, she was put into a fifth grade classroom, and the kids in her classroom couldn't read. But they had to pass a standardized test for fifth graders, and that was how my sister was going to be judged as a teacher. Now, my sister knew how to teach reading because that's what she did all the time as a first and second grade teacher. And she knew that that is really the thing that would have made the biggest difference in these kids' lives. But because she was being tested on them passing 5th grade material, she had to sort of straddle the line between trying to teach them what she knew they needed and also trying to get them to pass this test. Now, if she didn't have that standardized curriculum in place, she would have done what was in her heart and simply taught them how to read. Because that is what would have helped them to have that light go on. Our Alliance standards are like that. They are a one-size-fits-all solution for a diverse group of learners. That's why standards will never be the answer for us, and educating our teachers is a better approach. So I've there's this myth that there's a lot of people who are unprepared going into teacher training, but I've done a lot of market research with yoga teachers, and what I find is there's quite a few people who wait a long time because they love yoga. They go to teacher training and it's totally a bad fit for them. So for a lot of people, it's like their 1st graders going to the 5th grade class, but there's also a lot of people who are like 10th graders who are being taught 5th grade material. So here's how the Yoga Alliance system is poorly designed according to educational theory. And on my screen, I am showing the requirements, which are all hours of learning. There is no path up to teacher training. So according to educational theory, you should be a master of the subject before you become a teacher of the subject. There are no requirements to train. That, there's no testing before you enter teacher training, no requirement, prerequisites to enter. And I've seen lots of blog posts and reports that there are people coming into teacher training who have never, ever studied yoga before they went to teacher training. It's not structured for the actual students in the classroom, so it's not like specifically tailored. There's not somebody coming in and designing it to the students. There's no assessment required. There are no requirements for people to have any kind of testing before they pass a certificate. I recently was in the yoga teachers group. There was a conversation about this, and somebody said, has anybody ever been in a teacher training group where they didn't give out certificates? And almost like there was a huge conversation of very few people said that they had ever seen someone denied a teacher training certificate. There was one person who I know, and he's very high standards, said that a couple of times he had given people a certificate but not signed it, and said that they had to complete their requirements before he would sign it, but they still did actually get a certificate. And there's no independent assessment. So for example, my sister being board certified, she had to send in a videotape to the board of her teaching, and that is how she was assessed. But it was assessed by an independent board and not by the people who actually taught the program, which is how it's often done in these schools. And this slide is an error. And it's supposed to say why the Yoga Alliance standards are bad marketing. And so probably with this many people on, there's somebody who is a marketing expert more than me, but I've been studying it for the last few years as I've been learning entrepreneurship, and I know a little. Okay, so marketing is simply an education process, and the point of marketing is for you to build trust in your business with your customers. So you start, and it's also how you create a relationship with the customers so they trust you and want to invest more of their time and money learning from you. The part where you put out an ad and go and promote your business, it's just part of marketing. The kinds of things that you sell in your business and how you price them and even naming them are also marketing. And they teach your customers what you have to offer them as they grow as a student. So to get people, and it's just, I sort of show it like a learning ladder. where you're starting by sort of that first date, buying them coffee. You're just getting their attention, getting the customer's foot in the door by offering them a Groupon, a freebie of some sort, however it is you get them to try it out. Try to give them a good experience, gain their trust, help them to grow as a student, give them more things that serve them, and then hopefully they become the satisfied repeat customer, and they're also really serving your business, but you're really serving them too. That's the point, the part where you have to create the relationship back to them. It's not just about you like selling to them. It's about you building a relationship that's interactive. So marketing at studios to get people, this is sort of what it looks like now, to get people in the door. Yoga studios offer the freebies, the Groupons, bring a friend for free. And then they grow trust by teaching regular classes. And there's a lot of mistakes, a lot of misunderstanding people have that they're going to like make a living just teaching regular classes. And it's pretty impossible to do that. So that's really a way to build trust with your clients. And then the students want to invest more. They offer them workshops and the teacher training programs, which are the big ticket item. Some studios have levels of classes, which is better, but generally the students sort themselves out into these levels. And I've seen in discussion groups a lot of anxious questions by teachers about what to do when there's someone in their class who needs more or less attention than the general level of the class. The learner is ready for teacher training when they can afford it or when they have the time to take it. And because so many studios need to sell that one expensive thing that they have to keep the doors open, they are selling it to whoever has a flexible wallet. Learners are often not ready for the training they are about to take, and alternately, they are not confident that they are ready to advance, and they wait so long that the training is too basic for them. So this is that first grader going into the fifth grade class, 10th grader coming to the fifth grade class. The people aren't giving guidance, proper guidance to people about when they're ready for teacher training. So this kind of system doesn't show learners a clear path of learning, and therefore it breaks the trust with students. A teacher-student relationship is much more like a parent-child relationship where you are in charge and you need to show your learners how you can help them. And I used to actually, in my posts and moving into stillness, I made a big point of calling my students class participants, and I've changed that since I've learned instructional design theory. I now call myself the teacher and my students because it is my role to guide my students. And understanding that it is my job to be in that teaching role has really changed my attitude toward teaching. So I'm not seeing anything else coming up in the chat, and feel free to make any comments. Alrighty, so now let's talk about martial arts world. We've had a lot of people join the call after I introduced myself, so I'll just say again that my husband is quite an advanced martial artist. I'm very proud of him. He's a 5th degree black belt in modern Arnis, or 6th degree. I think he's 6th degree now. And then he's also owns ranked at black belt level or above in at least 4 other systems. And so we talk quite a bit about the differences between yoga and martial arts between us. Let's see if I can move my little window so that you can see the stripe. So let's just talk about how it works. Now, every single studio has, not every studio, but every system and many studios have their own systems. They always start with a white belt. You're a newbie when you have the white belt, and then they go up to at the black belt level, you can teach. You are ready to represent the studio. In between, there's a number of belts, and they vary by system. They vary by color. They can vary how many they are. But there are belts in between. And then there are levels of black belt beyond. Like, for example, my husband and his system, they're very into red. because he is 6th degree. Then he has his belt it's a black belt that's lined with red, and then it has like a red stripe on it to indicate that he's a 6th degree black belt. So there's levels of teacher training above the initial level that are clearly designated by these stripes. You have to pay for the belt and initially your uniform, and you have to pay for the test, and there's testing at every level. Black belts are assessed by other senior teachers in the system who are not part of the studio, because they want to make sure that you really are capable of representing their system. And as I said, there are belts beyond the black belt. Now I'll move my window back. Belt systems show their students a clear path of learning. This is how they're good learning. They follow the learning ladder. In my little idealized belt system here, you see how it so nicely fits with the learning ladder. That's totally not a coincidence. Okay, so the testing is done independently, which is a huge issue in the yoga world, that we do not require independent testing. So it's not their own teacher telling them they are ready, but someone outside of the system, an outside teacher within their system who's familiar with the standards. So that gives the students confidence that they deserve to be in the class they are in. And the students who have had a little too much confidence and have tried to advance to a level they're not ready for are lovingly shown where they truly belong and kept at an appropriate level of learning for them. Students can only advance to teaching once they have advanced up the levels of learning, and we are sorely missing that in the yoga world, a structure up to teacher training. Belt systems keep people engaged in learning because it shows them how to get better, and it motivates them to try. Belt systems give martial arts studios more things to sell that are appropriate for their students, because, you know, they sell these belt tests. They sell these. Oh, there's 3 participants and 30 chats. It was like, wow, a ton of people joined. It's really getting ahead of myself. Like, wow, all these people joined. Okay, that's hilarious. So the belt systems give martial arts studios more things to sell that are appropriate for their students. And then they sell the belts, they sell the uniforms, and they sell the testing. And it creates more modestly sized ongoing sales in addition to the big ticket items of workshops and black belt tests. So if you've ever been around the martial arts world, you know it's a little different from the yoga world. And a lot of the stuff is a little cheesy that they do. And there are some of them that are a little gross, honestly. So it's not without its problems. They do a lot of selling to children. That's how they keep their doors open. They sort of marketed it as being a way to keep unruly children disciplined. So it's a little different world. It's not exactly the same, but I think we should look at the structure of what they're doing from a learning perspective as something that we can look to as an example of something we could try. So let's talk about how a bracelet system would work. I just want to see something real quick. Okay, good. Okay, so the other person left, but I still have you on, Deborah. Okay, so the yoga world doesn't want as much structure as the martial art world does. But we don't need to wear our rank around our waist so that everybody in the class knows where we're at. But we can still do something similar in a softer way. What I'm proposing is that we give out bracelets or charms on a bracelet instead of belts. And there's a million other ways it could be done. It could be tattoos, could be, I don't care, t-shirts. The thing is that I just felt like this suited yoga nicely. So it worked just like a belt system. There'd be assessment at every level, and a student could not advance to teaching until they passed assessment at each level. Students would need to pay to test and pay for their bracelets, and they could not advance until they had passed a test. And they couldn't apply for teacher training until they'd passed to an appropriate level. So let's just talk about this issue of non-judging that often comes up related to testing. Assessing learning skills is not the same as judging someone. It's simply you as a teacher measuring whether the student demonstrates actions that show that they have acquired the skill that you are teaching them. Assessment is loving. It helps your students know what they are doing right so that they can grow. It shows them that you are paying attention to them and see their progress. And it shows that you care, that they really are learning. You can start using this now. So go out and buy some bracelets, this one, and give them to your students. And you don't need to just have one bracelet system. Make it personal. Get creative with this. The point is to create that individual ladder of learning for the students in front of you, and not to create an inflexible system that binds you. So I work with a woman and her daughter together, and I had found these little bracelets. They're called loci bracelets. I think that's how they're pronounced, loci. And they have a nice story that's relevant to yoga. They're tough and sturdy. This one's super colorful. I knew that they would like that. They have matching bracelets, which I thought they would enjoy. They're sturdy, but they're a little special. If they lose them, it's not so precious. It's perfect for them. You know, I don't actually know what the whole ladder of learning I'm going to develop for them is, but I know they're beginners, and I can give them their beginner black belt, their white belt, basically, in yoga. Well, this one's pink and red. They have actually, the reason I picked it is they have like 30 colors or something, so I knew I'd have lots of choices. So this is why it's better education. It shows the ladder of learning for yoga. The learner has to commit over and over again to their practice by paying, and that's an important thing. I know teachers don't like to talk about this, but as I've learned about business, I've learned that people paying is important. It's how they show their commitment. And if we don't ask them to pay, then we don't ask them to commit. Testing for each level of learning to ensure that the student is on the right track. Students are ready to begin studying teaching when they enter teacher training, and that's the big key. The dedicated students get in faster, and the ones who are ready who aren't ready are delayed from entering until they are ready. And people who study in different styles can still communicate the breadth of their learning. And this is like, for me, I've studied a bunch of different styles, and it's very difficult for me to show people how much knowledge I have because I don't fit into any system. But you could imagine people going to a retreat or something and having a stack of bracelets on their arm, and 6 of them are from one system and 3 from another and 2 from another. And they can demonstrate to people the breadth of their knowledge in that way. And it's social for the yoga world. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I'm glad you came, Deborah. Thank you so much. It means so much to me that you came. And I really am glad that you're listening to this. I'm also super excited to hear that you have a background in education, because I think you'll grok it a lot more. So I'll put the replay up. You're welcome. I'll put the replay up on YouTube, and I'll give you a link to it, and I'll put it in the Occupy group. Thank you so much for being here. And I think, yeah, everybody else might have left at this point. Yeah, it's just me talking to myself, but I'll continue the recording so you can see it. Okay, yes, you're welcome. Thank you. I'll be excited to hear what people have to say. I hope they don't tear me apart. Bye. Have a wonderful day, Deborah. Bye. Okay, so we talked about this. So let's talk about why it's better marketing. So it gives you more stuff to sell that's appropriate for people to buy. It keeps people engaged by showing them what the next step is. And people buying stuff, it's a little like unlocking levels. And people love that. People, you know, it's like that little, like, ding, here's the next thing in the game. So like, you know, just having that next thing to buy motivates people to get to the next place. Also, I just want to back up here and say a couple of other things about bracelets. It's a way for us to support artists. We also can design bracelets that fit our market. So for example, let's say you're in New York or you're in the Hamptons or something like that, where people are a little more status oriented. Well, you could have bracelets that are made of gold or made of silver, make them very status oriented. And if you're in an area where yoga's new, then you could also make these bracelets. First of all, make your system a little smaller, a little more appropriate level of learning for your students. But also you could have things that sort of fit the style of people there. And so there could be a lot artistically going on with these to really suit people and keep them interested in what you're doing. So in summary, this is a better way of marketing and a better way of educating. Let's go out and try it. So thank you so much for coming. This is the end of my presentation. SadhanaTeaching.com is coming soon. I will be putting this linked to the instructional design toolbox that I talked about, which has information about learning taxonomies, about Gagne's 9 steps of instruction, which show how you design training. It's like a little formula for how you design a lesson and also how you write teaching goals. It's free to everybody. I just want people to have these basic skills for how you design teaching. And then I also give some activities related to spirituality for people who want to learn how to teach spirituality without preaching. So thank you so much for watching this replay or attending. And I look forward to seeing the comments on this. I would love to know your ideas. I think this is just a first step and a start of starting a big conversation in the yoga world about improving our education, breaking out of this idea that the Yoga Alliance needs to have a role in this or not. I think that we can just start creating good training now. Thank you so much. And if you're interested in what I'm doing, you can join me online at the Sadhana community for yoga enthusiasts, yoga teachers and enthusiasts on Facebook. Thank you so much. And stopping the share so I can stop the recording.